Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our webinar this morning. My name is Peter James. I am the Managing Director of Career Life Transitions, and we have been working in this field for a number of years. I've certainly been involved in organisational culture and rolling out cultural programs for probably the last 25, 30 years. I'm really interested in this subject. I think you're going to really enjoy the presentation and get a lot from it. We have some questions that we've asked you to submit earlier, so thank you very much for providing those to us. And I'm just playing around with this for a second. And I'll try to answer them as we go through the program. So we're on for about 35 minutes or so, then we'll spend about 10 minutes just any further questions or anything you might have in regards to the program. And we're more than happy to come out and meet with yourself or your management or the team to discuss building company values for a powerful culture. Okay, I'm going to just start with a couple of definitions. And Edgar Schein, almost seen as the father of culture and values in regards to organisations. He says a culture is a pattern of shared basic assumptions that the group has learned as it solves its problems of external adaptation, internal integration. So I guess right from the beginning through here, our approach to culture and values is based on alignment. And several of the questions that you're asking are, how do I get this person involved? How do I get management involved? How do I get, well, that is, I guess, the key question. How do I get alignment, not only with the marketplace, with management, with employees, with everybody that's the stakeholders involved in the organisation? Because that is what starts to build the culture. So moving on from culture, then we talk about, well, what are the values? And we talk about personal values, and they're the principles that help you grow and decide what's right and wrong, how to act in various situations. Then you get those set of principles from a broad range of interactions, starting from your parents, from the social groups, from school, all the interactions you have with people. You are working out ways to be the best you can with what you have. When we roll that into organisations, we're now talking about the philosophies and principles that guide an organisation's internal conduct, as well as this relation with, in relation to customers, partners, and shareholders. So what we're seeing through this is that the culture and values is almost a shared collective of the interactions of the individuals to solve problems, interact, and be the best they can in the world. And even when we're doing one-on-one coaching, when we see people whose behaviour is not getting the results they want, you still need to remember that they are doing the best with what they have. It's just developed in a slightly misguided way. They're not good getting the results they were hoping to get. Okay. Therefore, culture and values are not something you choose to have or not to have. I mean, you can't decide whether I want to play this game or not play this game. It's the same as your own personal brand. You can't decide I want to have one, I don't want to have one. Whether you decide or not, it exists. It exists in your people and the company, the industry, the country, whatever it is. So the real question then is, are you planning and developing that, or has it just evolved anecdotally or ad hoc in your organisation? And I think a lot of cultures, when a business starts and it's reasonably small, you get a group of people who are quite like-minded coming together, because you tend to, in small organizations, work with people you like, know, and trust. And you start to become the core of that, and the way that evolves and how you bounce off each other starts in itself to develop the culture and values. As you invite more people into it, you may be choosing people that also align with those cultural values. But at some point, you're going to, as you grow, you're going to need to then start to attract people that aren't naturally aligned to your cultural values. And then you're going to need to develop them. If you don't, then they will act and behave in the way that they know best. And that may be in conflict, especially when you have organizations that are geographically diverse. So you employ someone, you put him into Karratha or you put him into Sydney as your branch office, and then wonder why the culture is different, while that person has brought in their own understanding of a culture. It may not align with yours. So the whys and whats of values and culture. Why would you bother focusing on this? I mean, it's a culture change, leadership is probably the most written about subject in management and consulting. But I mean, I've always seen a strong culture and value organisation as a major strategic advantage. It's a highly effective strategic advantage because it takes time to develop, which means that if I run out, I run a business and I run out and I buy a brand new machine, that might give me a strategic advantage for a short amount of time, but my competition have access to that same machine. I may invent something new, but as soon as it goes out in the marketplace sees what that is and then starts to copy it straight away. But if I'm developing a very, very strong culture in my people, then that's very, very hard to duplicate in a short amount of time. So it leads to discretionary effort, and discretionary effort comes from a sense of purpose and belonging for people and organisation. And that discretionary effort is developed with strong culture and values. And I believe that a discretionary effort in your organisation is the oil of a successful business. For someone in your business to go that little bit further, to put a little bit more effort, to think a little bit more about what they're doing is certainly worth its weight in gold, rather than someone that says, well, that's not my job, or at the end of the day, I've got another 5 minutes of work to do to finish this, but I'll go home now. All those type of things. Staff productivity, morale, turnover, effort impact heavily on their values and culture. So good alignment means good business. And continuous improvement, a desire to be better, must have its basis in strong values and culture and a desire to be involved in a great company. I saw this slide and I kind of liked it. It struck a chord with me. Really, it's having a look at your forward momentum and equilibrium. So if you have a good team, you will have probably 10% of your people that are, okay, take them or leave them, 10% which are absolutely outstanding, and then the average will sit across in that bell curve. If I put that in a circle, how do I move from a good team to a great team? Well, I need to shift that momentum of the bell curve forward to roll it forward. So we're always looking for, okay, well, I can't have those stragglers. I can't create exceptions in an organisation and say that's okay, because the exceptions are actually holding you in equilibrium. So if you have an organisation and you're tolerating 5 to 10% of your people who are just not getting on board, they are actually starting to be anchors in your organisation. And it's interesting. I mean, I remember working for an organisation a number of years ago where there was one person, and he was the best salesperson. So you've got to remember the context of this in terms of a business. When you've got your best salesperson, but he behaved in a way which was contrary to where they wanted the values of the organisation to go. So the message kind of went out to the troops. These are the new values we'd like to adopt. But everyone just kind of looked back at this character and said, well, why is he doing what he wants to do when you're expecting us to do something different? So he almost became the barometer of the culture of the business. And despite the fact that he was bringing in enormous sales, as the business grew, he actually became an anchor for a change in the values and culture of that organisation. Very interesting, and a difficult challenge to solve for management. How do you get rid of your best salesperson when you know that he's actually holding the organisation back in one way and advancing it so well in the other way? I mean, when we look at where high performance teams operate, there's that balance for concern for result and concern for people. So you need to get that balance, and that concern for people is building strong values and culture within the organisation. So you're looking for that work is accomplished by committed people, independence through common stake in the organisation, purpose leads to relationships of trust and respect. And you go back to Lencioni's model, the very base of that is trust. Now, trust comes from a shared set of values and a number of factors obviously go to make up trust. And we cover that actually in one of our other presentations. So I'm not going to labour on that too much. So where does it go wrong in organisations? Now, most value statements are bland, toothless, or just plain dishonest. That's a fairly strong statement, I understand that, but misalignment is the enemy of culture and values. Some executives assume that going through that process and putting up a set of values and what have you is harmless, but most of the time they're actually highly destructive. Empty value statements create cynicism and dispirited employees, alienate customers, and undermine the management and leadership credibility. If you're not willing to accept the time and effort to really focus on developing values in your business to be effective and work on those, then don't bother going to the trouble of formulating that value statement. So it's not something part of a business where, okay, this is what everyone else is doing, we better pull something together and put it up on the wall. If you make any kind of statement within an organization as to where it wants to be, you'll get a laser focus on that from your employees. And if you then ignore that, then you're actually in a worse position than if you said nothing. Once I make a statement, this is what I want to do, and then you go in the opposite direction but expect them to fall in line, then you're creating some issues with the business, because you're actually now highlighting the areas where you're not stepping up. I mean, and there are a number of, I guess, individual symptoms and behaviour and organisational symptoms you get when you don't have values alignment, from anxiety, frustration, retardation of development, rejection of the environment, refusal to participate, and withdrawal. And you see all these things in reduced morale, reduced productivity, reduced motivation. And given, I guess, the enormity of all of these issues in the business, it's not surprising, and the complexity that goes with it, it's not surprising that a lot of management teams really struggle with what this means, what it looks like, and how we're going to manage it. And the larger the organisation, the larger it is, because the more time you need to put in to actually start to develop it. In small organisations, they can run into their own issues as well, because individuals can very, very quickly see where their values, personal values, and the business values do and don't align. So it's not something specific to large organisations or small organisations. It really is across the board. Just the way you will go about dealing with it is going to be different depending on the context. So I think a lot of organisations kind of make the mistake of not actually, or not really defining where their values are coming from. So you can have a set of core values, and these are things, and your core values usually sits with, if it's a single leader in the organisation, their core values are the ones that will expand quite quickly in the business. Now, they can be good, average, or bad, whatever it is. I can either correct those, but it is a set of values that are core to the way of behaviours. And you see the values because you see what people pay attention to, what they reward, what they censure, what they turn their nose up. I mean, you're fairly quickly, if you get in with a group of people and start to talk about controversial subjects, you'll quickly see behaviours change as you cross boundaries of core behaviours for those individuals. So that in terms of trying to find a base set of core values that fits and guides an organisation is an interesting challenge for senior management, especially when some of those senior management, maybe their core values are in conflict as well. Then you have the accidental values, and I think most organisations probably run off accidental values. In other words, it's just the spontaneous interactions that employees get together to make things work. Because you've got to remember the behaviours, I don't believe, although there is a percentage of people who will demonstrate malicious behaviour, I don't generally believe that anyone goes to work to be malicious. I believe everyone is trying to do the best they can with what they have. And sometimes those things may kind of cross your personal core values, But you've got to remember, under the circumstances, they're doing the best they can with that. And that starts to build, because then as supervisors adopt those accidental behaviours and values, they will flow them on to the people that come to work with them. So you start to build this whole value structure, which is based on how people need to interact to succeed in the business. And sometimes that is not all that functional. Another thing that I think businesses start to trip over a little bit is they mix up their core value with aspirational values. So they end up with a value statement that talk about where they want to go. Now, if they don't have a plan of how to get there, then you're back into that situation we were talking about previously, where people are like, there is a massive misalignment here. They haven't explained their aspirational values, and they haven't explained their approach or the way they're going to achieve that. They've just stuck them out there. And if they're not aligned with the values of how things are operating at the moment, it just aggravates people. Then you have your permission to play values, and that really is just a simple minimum behaviour and social standards required of anybody to interact. So it really just doesn't distinguish. It's just people coming to work and doing their job and going home again. And it's just how do I get through the day? And once again, not adding a lot of value to your. But have you thought about your company values and where does it sit in this matrix? Now, some of you may have seen the Competing Values Network framework. I think it's online. It's of no cost. You can actually get online and run this within your organization. But it is an interesting one, because it talks about, I guess, the 4 factors of what drives a business within a marketplace. Because let's face it, we're developing shared values and behaviors in a business for a result in a marketplace. We're not doing it just for the fun of doing it. And they're talking about whether an organization is flexible with a lot of discretion or very, very stable and controlled. On the other side of the matrix is internal focus and integration. In other words, what's happening inside. On the right-hand side is external focus and differentiation. And I mean, there are just, once again, I mean, all models are flawed, but all models are an interesting way they add value. They're an interesting way, a window to look through a situation. On the top left, if you're looking for internal focus and integration, but flexibility and discretion within that group, you're talking about a clan type culture, and that's a family, a focus on mentoring, nurturing, doing things together. An example of a clan culture will be something like Virgin. I mean, Richard Branson is almost like a father figure for that organisation, or L&L Bean, which is voted over and over again as the most friendly culture to work in. On the right-hand side, where you're now talking about flexibility and discretion, but it's a very external focus to it, you have adhocracy, and that is about doing things first. And you know, any kind of startup IT company, Google certainly would fit into that adhocracy type of values. Moving down market, where you've got stability and control, and external focus and differentiation is getting the job done, and that's the market type of culture in that. And McDonald's, Coca-Cola, Uber, those kind of organizations that are getting the job done are focusing on the market side of it. The bottom left, where I have an internal focus and integration and a lot of stability and control, doing things right, you really are now looking at government organizations, things that are highly regulated, your utilities, and even to a certain extent, some of the larger companies like BHP and Rio may be looked at in that way. Now, where you have why it's called a competing values framework is that people are attracted based on their own values and behaviors to certain ways of operating. Now, as a business grows, it will start to fall into one of these categories, as I say, whether it likes it or not, and you'll start to attract people. Someone who wants to be market focused and have a high level of discretion and flexibility is probably not going to enjoy being in a structure which is very, very, or in all cultures are very, very structured and controlled. But where things change is, right, we have an organization that's built in a certain way, and let's say we have a new CEO comes in, and the new CEO says, you know, we need to change the way we interact. We need to change the way we interact with the market, because this is driven by the needs of the marketplace. And they may come in and say, all right, well, now we need to be more market-driven from a hierarchy point of view, which means a shift from an internal focus to an external focus. Now, first of all, he needs to get the board on board. He needs to get senior management on board. And then now you have a whole stack of employees who are used to a culture, structure, controlled environment. You're now asking them to be market oriented. Now you can start to see where the gaps come up in that, where you really have to put a fair bit of effort into moving that, and you're going to lose people. The people are not going to be happy with it. They are going to hold back in the structure, that the culture that they are originally attracted to. And certainly in my career coaching role, there are a lot of people leaving organizations because they say, it's not the organization I joined. It's not where I want to go. They're not heading in a direction. And that's just a change in culture and values that misalign with the individual. So people are complex. You know, we categorize people in probably 6 different types of value sets. They have personal values, they have moral values, they have family values, social values, physiological values, spiritual values. So they're coming to work with all this set of complexity. And everyone is unique. Everyone will have their own view on that. You can probably categorize them in one way or the other, but with the complexity of it, people come in and they're very, very unique in the way they see and interact. But at the same time, we are pack animals. We do like to fit in. So I will either modify these things to fit the culture I'm in, if that is not too big a stretch for me, or I may even jump into an organization where it is a big stretch for me for other reasons. And certainly I've seen that many times where someone has, I just need a job, I need to pay the bills, I'll just join this company. They get in there and they find that the values actually misalign quite significantly from their own values, and they either become despondent, disengaged employees, or at some point they leave, or the organization creates that separation. So that alignment, we kind of ignore it at our peril, but as I say, other imperatives sometimes drive us. Now, at different times, it really depends on the strength of my values in each of these kind of things. Then I may try then to influence that organization. And I've certainly seen individuals go into organizations, even at quite low level, who have a very, very strong set of values, who start to build a group of followers, if you like, that it's at times not in alignment with the organization's values, and you let that individual grow and grow their support within the business. Now you ended up with situations where you have disconnections. And as I say, I've seen a storeman run a factory previously to the detriment of the organization. So that's what values and culture is. That's why you need it. Now let's have a look at, how do I start to build that alignment and create that effective values and culture? So as I said to you, it starts with the marketplace. We're not doing this just for the fun of trying to get everyone on board or what have you. What we're really doing is saying, okay, there is a marketplace at which we're operating in, and I really need the company, leadership, people, and social groups and what have you in that organization, all to be aligned with a set of values that makes us the best we can be in that marketplace, not just makes us the best that the individual wants to be, although those two things do need to be aligned. So We start off on the left-hand side with our current situation. We have a set of values and cultures. As I said, regardless of how a business builds or where a business starts, once I get a group of people together, they will develop a set of shared values and therefore demonstrate a culture. So you really need to say, well, if I want to change that, why do I need to change that? What are we trying to do? And I think a lot of organizations probably don't think through, or leadership, I should say, don't really think through, well, what is it? They may have a sense of the dissatisfaction, but what is it? Why do we need to change? And if we need to change, where are we going with this? Now, Danny Miller put together her version of the, I guess, the mathematics of change management there. And she said that a level of dissatisfaction with the status quo times a clear vision for the future times a plan, and first steps, has to be greater than the resistance in the business. So if I'm looking to change, and I'll put a little model of DISC in there that talks about behaviors, and there are many, many models that you can look at, is, all right, that's where we are now. Where do we want to go? What is our vision? What is our plan? Is everyone quite clear as to why we need to get there? And unfortunately, I guess, for a lot of businesses, when that dissatisfaction level just becomes so blatantly obvious to everybody in the business that this cannot continue in this way, it's almost too late. In trying to convince businesses that we shouldn't get to the point where we're now absolutely have to change, otherwise we close the doors next week, is almost a little bit too late. You'd want to be having a look at the business continuously and saying, all right, how can we be better than where we are now, not waiting to the point where we're not doing well at all and it's obvious to everyone that there's a massive dissatisfaction. The next part about it is having a clear vision. If you want to move somewhere, you want to be very, very clear as to where you want to end up. You can't negotiate a deal unless you know what you want to get out of the deal at the end of it. So flowing that through then is saying, well, we need a purpose, we need a vision, we need to define the values and define that value in terms of the marketplace. What is the marketplace demanding from us? Then it moves over to leadership behavior. And leadership behavior, I think many, many executives I've worked with really don't appreciate the massive impact that they have on the people around them in their everyday actions. What they walk down the corridor, what they're frowning at, what they're smiling at, what they're noticing, what they're ignoring, all those kind of things start to mold the values and culture of an organization. The leadership behaviors, once a leader flies in the face of his stated values, then you've got a major problem, because if anyone sees that, now everyone has been let off the hook. It's like the safety manager that walks past a dangerous situation, just tells everybody that they are not interested in safety, or it's not that important to them. In building that, you need to build rewards and corrections in it. And rewards or corrections, you can't allow things to slip by. If you have a set of stated values, and the stated values need to be defined in observable behaviors. We do this and we don't do that. Having a stated value just sets up a set of blinker words in its initial statement. And blinker words are just words where people have different definitions. We will communicate, we will collaborate, we are innovators and what have you. I mean, most people have their own personal definition of what those things mean and look like, and their own behaviors to it. So if you're going to set up a set of values, you need to look at the actual observable manifestations of that in the workplace and get your leadership to demonstrate that. And they reward people that do things well, and they put in place corrections for people that, or for situations where it doesn't support the values. And they're building stories, and stories are very, very powerful in creating values. Such and such did this, we got a great result and a great reward, and management were really happy about it. Such and such did this, and we had a fantastic interaction with a customer and won a big contract. All those kind of things start to say, someone behaved in this way to get this great result, and we all grew and developed as a result of that. So, as I said to you, the why, the where, the how, and look at that in terms of the dissatisfaction of the current state, a clear future vision, and plan to get there. And you need to build that upgrade and the resistance that you're currently facing. So the focus on the key elements of structure of culture. There are values, there's traditions, there's procedures, there's symbols, there's rituals and ceremonies, and all these kind of things go to build your culture. The way it's always been done, how the policies and procedures are written. Does the managing director and the team get the best parking spots in the parking lot? Who goes to lunch first? All those kind of things start to tell a story, because as I say, the stories will exist in your organization. You can make them positive stories, or you can allow the negative stories to grow. But it's a leader's task to make certain that everybody has a consistent picture of the organization's beliefs and values and is ready and willing to act on them. This is done by creating heroes, putting rituals and ceremonies in place, encouraging storytelling about heroes of the organization's past, and creating myths that set the tone for the organization. So the key points of your culture and company core value change. Take the time to understand your actual current and culture and values now. Who's driving that? What are the stories? What are the rituals? What are the symbols that build your current culture? Are you clear about what culture and values you want, and are you prepared to see it through? I mean, many cultural change start with almost an idea that we need to interact with differently with our stakeholders and customers. No kind of clear view as to what that looks like, some fairly kind of half-baked plans of how to get there, and then when it all falls over halfway through, because it really does take consistency, effort and focus, then the next time you try and roll out that culture again, everyone's just going to kind of look at it and think, yeah, no, this is not going to come together. And you remember, for a lot of organizations, certainly several that I've worked with, the leadership and management team tend to rotate through every 2 to 5 years. But if you look at the employee base of some of these big organizations, some of these people have been there for 30 or 40 years. So they've seen 1 or 2 culture changes. They've seen things flow through the organization or whatever. And some of them just really believe that they're just going to see it through, because in 2 to 5 years' time, new management are going to come in and it's going to be great coats on, great coats off. So why would I even be bothered? You know, I'll go into avoidance, oppositional mode, and just sort of float this one through. You need to determine the core values and make those clear. Now, we talk about let's get together and decide what our shared values and what have you are. Well, because of the complexity of that involved, I don't think that's the way to go. I really do think that the leadership team need to get together and say, these are the core values that we need to align the business to the marketplace to be successful. Throwing it open for everyone to come in and have a little discussion about their definition of values and all the rest of it, and creating a value based on everyone's opinion, well, I don't think everyone has the ability to understand the complexity of the market and the context of the business to be able to make those calls. So in leadership, if you're the senior leadership team, take the time to properly develop and understand the values you want. Evaluate your leaders and management, supervisory skills and behavioral competencies, and you need to develop those. There needs to be consistency in the behaviors that the workforce sees in that level of the organization. And if you don't see it, that is where the leader needs to start doing his correct reward and correcting behavior. Look for values alignment in everything. Don't assume people's understanding about values. Throwing something out here saying this is our new value set and expecting that someone is going to see that, interpret it the way you interpret it, and then demonstrate behaviors that are aligned with it, is a little bit of a wish list, a bridge too far. If you want people to understand the values on what's accepted and not accepted, then you need to communicate, communicate, and communicate again. reward compliance and address corrections without exception. Our friend Justin Langer, if you talk to Justin and look at the way he interacts with the Australian cricket team, his values are absolutely rock solid and indisputable. And he is absolutely intolerant of anyone flying in the face of that. So it is about, he has a very strong set of core values, and he expects compliance to that without exception and without discussion. Be prepared to lose some people. Now, if you're going on a journey, as I said, if we go back and have a look at that bell curve, you're always going to have a certain percentage of people that, no matter what you roll out, are holding the business back. And as you move that forward, that group may start to grow or shift. Not everyone's going to come along with the journey. You cannot tolerate someone that is actively, because they may start to then move into almost malicious, with malicious intent within the business, because their values are now so broadly misaligned with where the organisation is going. Now, I'm not saying malicious in terms of bad values or anything like that, but I mean, it is malicious behaviour in terms of it's flying in the face of where the organisation is going and actively trying to prevent that from happening. And that is malicious behaviour, and that needs to be dealt with. Record and tell stories supporting the core values and stick at it. I mean, values don't happen or change overnight, which is, I always find that quite an interesting one, because I have seen on several occasions where a new CEO or a new leader has come into an organisation and almost changed the values of that organisation within about 3 months in an extremely negative way. Now, I guess that is really where someone has come in and their values are so misaligned with the organisation they're working with, that it's very, very clear to everyone that where this person is going and their behaviours don't align with the individuals. And in that case, you usually get the best of the people in that organisation leave because there's a misalignment in values, and the rest that may then start to comply with that new set of values. Okay, you're on a road to nowhere. So they usually say that values in organisation to change that is going to take 2 to 3 years. I really believe that is totally based on the behaviour of senior management. The head of Alcoa, maybe 20 years ago, is a famous example where they had quite a high safety failure record, and he made it his mission to come in and solve that very, very quickly. So from Pennsylvania, he demanded that every morning he get a list of any injuries anywhere in the world. And the first thing he did was, when he got in the morning from that list, he phoned the person who was injured and asked them what had happened, if they were okay, followed that up. Then he phoned the immediate manager of that person and said, what are you doing to make sure this doesn't happen again? Now, that is a very, very direct intervention from leadership to deliberately change the culture of that organisation, which is very, very successful very, very quickly. So the values cascade model is really taking that and saying, okay, if we're clear about how we work together here, what do we value? What's important in our area of business? What is our contribution? In other words, what is it, the context of the market we're operating in? Then it's about committing to behaviours that are based on that. So what are the specific observable behaviours we do and don't want to see in the business? We take the organisation values, align them with definable and behaviours through commitment, and setting actions in place to hold each other accountable for that. This is acceptable, that's not acceptable. And certainly I've done some work in a number of organisations where we've taken that and defined the observable behaviours within a section of the business, especially large businesses, that mean something to the individuals that they can see and hold each other to account on, but also clearly aligned with the overall or the overarching values of the organisation. Because it's going to be different. I mean, how I define communications in terms of the accounts team may be completely different how I define communications in the finance team, for example, or R&D, or whatever that area is. The values can sit there because they are behaviours, but how I interact with them may be different. even though they will all align. So start with a vision then, intervention strategies, building team building, skills development, walk the talk, role modeling, what behaviour do you want to see, deliberate action, creating accountability and responsibility, hiring the right people, and then sadly getting rid of those that may be anchors to it. Get specialists in with specific knowledge, and certainly that's the kind of work that Career Life Transitions are available to support you with. Commitment for your top leaders, they must be involved. Not having the top leader come in and say, I am 100% committed to this, and understanding their behaviours and how they impact on it is absolutely critical. And you must put resources in it. Transformation takes time and money. Hoping that you can just load a transformation program up on your senior management team, which is probably already working for 10, 12 hours a day, and asking them to do that in their spare time is not realistic. You certainly may want them, but you will want them to align with their behaviours and what have you, but you need to be supporting them, not just loading them up with what is actually a massive job, because it does take time and effort. So, in summary, values initiatives have nothing to do with building consensus. They're about imposing a set of fundamental, strategically sound beliefs on a broad group of people. As I said, people are coming to the organisation. They have a whole set of values that they can roll out for themselves. And you may end up with whatever value set you want and the culture that goes along with that. If you want it to be a certain way, you need to impose that. Given all the hard work that goes into developing and implementing a solid value culture, most companies will prefer not to bother. And indeed they shouldn't, because if you go down this path and you do it badly, it can actually poison your company's culture. Make no mistake, living this, values are different after all. I mean, a lot of senior management I see, they're very, very happy to tell people how they need to behave, but don't think that it applies back to them. So it's much harder to be clear and unapologetic for what you stand for than to cave to the pressures within the business. And organisations trying to repair the damage caused by a bad values program are really battling uphill. So if you want to devote your time and energy to creating authentic value statements, there's a good chance the resulting value will stand your company in good stead and create a major strategic advantage, which is will separate you from your competition moving forward. Okay, I think we are coming to the end of the program. So as I say, I'm just going to stop sharing and bring myself back up again here and have a look at, I don't think we have any questions. At this stage, does anybody have any questions? I mean, I have a couple here that that you submitted earlier, and I think I may have addressed those, but things like Colette asked how to get office staff employees interested in developing a value structure. Well, go back and have a look at the dissatisfaction with the current state, because as I say, dissatisfaction and a clear view of where you're going, plus a plan, even first steps to get there, will start to engage your people. Addressing this issue following significant organisational change. Well, it really depends on what that organisational change is, whether it's a technical change, in other words, you're rolling out new IT systems or what have you, and how much effort you actually put into the people change process. Because organisations are very, very good at rolling out technical changes in the business, and they start to marginalise the people impact, because the technical change very, very quickly sits on the spreadsheet. And I've often wondered myself, when I look at a spreadsheet, where have you added the value of fully engaged and productive employees on this spreadsheet? And unfortunately, if it doesn't sit there, then management teams are not necessarily paying attention to that. Getting senior leadership to actively plan and push for action around culture. Well, unless they see the pain, the suffering from that, and it takes some effort to pull that together to be able to present a business case saying, if we were more engaged and more productive, that would equal an increase of 10% in profitability, and here is why. That is a challenge. You really do need to put a lot of effort into that kind of business case because there are so many anomalies, and it's for someone that is out of the legal profession or out of the accounting profession, finance. Once again, those things don't immediately kind of sit in a sequence of events that provide what they believe leads to profitable business. Mitigating the culture of bullying and intimidation. Well, really that is going back and saying, right, if we're not happy with that, we need to change this, and being very, very clear as to the values and the behaviours that we expect to see, and censoring where it falls off, and rewarding where people don't behave in that way. Communicating the need and path for a business-wide transformation. Well, communications is the key. I always look at going back to that model and saying, right, where is this dissatisfaction, and make sure everyone's very, very clear. We can't go on like this. Where do we want to go, and what are our first steps to get there? And you just need to be going back and revisiting that and building that case. And the last question, changing a toxic passive-aggressive culture. Well, I mean, that toxic-aggressive culture comes from the shared values of the people that are in there. So they may not have made that choice, but they're certainly bringing that to the workplace. Turning back and redefining that and saying, all right, this is the behaviour we're expecting from that, and going through the process of rewarding and censoring where people are behaving in that ways and not behaving that way. And it may be to the point of taking some key people who are almost at that point of maliciously impacting that culture and taking them out. Because in Good to Great, if you're reading Jim Collins' book, first thing he says is get the right people on the bus. Okay, so have you seen examples? So Joanne has written, have you seen examples of organisations put the value of engagement on their spreadsheet? Yes, I have. Organisations that look at that and start to define, because I mean, even anecdotally in organisational development, most organisational people will say that it's worth between 10 and 20% increase in profitability. Now, if I turned around, I mean, I don't know what other piece of machinery or invention that you could roll out that would give you that sustainable strategic advantage where people are engaged in adding that much value to the bottom line of the business. So yes, there are organizations out there that are actually looking at doing this in a number of different ways, everything from open book management styles to organizations like Google and what have you that put a lot of focus specifically on the well-being of their employees. Okay, that's 9:45. I know all of you have got a busy day ahead. I mean, it's a beautiful day outside, nice and crisp. We really appreciate you joining us this morning. Peter James is my name from Career Life Transitions. If you'd like us to come out and talk to you or your management team or your team about rolling out a great culture, please give us a call. And on that note, thank you very much for your attendance, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye-bye.